Now that NFL free agency has mostly died down and a lot of new running backs are in place, we're going to look at some players that we're going to back off of and not draft. These are our top avoids in the early part of the fantasy football draft season. So, Chris, who's your first player?
Well, I'm ready for the thumb downs, and I'm ready for the mean comments, but it's Jonathan Taylor. And look, this doesn't have anything to do with Jonathan Taylor. I was all over Jonathan Taylor early in the offseason, drafting him in the first round when I thought it was just going to be Jonathan Taylor and Nyheim Hines. But the Colts went out and brought Marlon Mack back. And I know a lot of people think, oh, he's coming off the Achilles injury, and that's fine. But here's the thing. I like Jonathan Taylor because it looked like he was locked into 20 touches a week. If Marlon Mack takes 5 to 8 touches away from Jonathan Taylor a week, in my opinion, that's enough to drop him down. And I can't draft him over guys like Nick Chubb, Cam Akers, Austin Eckler, and Aaron Jones, who he's being drafted ahead of. So it's not so much that I don't like Jonathan Taylor. I do. I just think with Marlon Mack back, he should be more of an early to mid second rounder. And people are still drafting this guy in the top 8, sometimes even the top 5. And I just think that's way too high. So I'm just not drafting Jonathan Taylor at the moment.
And I feel you on that because here's the thing. I think for a little while, right after the season ended, we all had that recency bias. And I think I got caught up a little bit too. We're like, okay, he's a top 5 pick, right? Top 5 overall, not just top 5 running back. And then we have to kind of take a step back and realize, well, maybe not. Maybe he didn't quite prove himself over the course of the season. There's a lot of people who were screaming bust midway through the season. He ended on a high note, but look, running all over that Jaguars defense and putting up big numbers toward the end of the year, that isn't itself enough to make him a top 5 guy. Now, I'm not sure how people are viewing David Johnson these days. There's always those truthers out there. There's people who will never forget that one magical season. But here's the hard truth. I don't care if you call him the lead backster in Houston. I'm pretty much avoiding everybody in Houston these days, even if Deshaun Watson gets cleared and he's a quarterback and all that is kind of back to normal. I'm still avoiding Houston, and I'm definitely avoiding this backfield because they're trying to form some weird kind of like 4-headed monster because they have David Johnson in place. They signed Mark Ingram, who was basically just on the bench the whole season for Baltimore. And then they decided they need Philip Lindsay, who is always hurt, but even when he plays, he just hasn't been the same since his rookie year. And they're just kind of accumulating all these running backs and wide receivers who are cheap veterans. And I think this offense is one that you just want zero part of. And that would include Watson, even if he does come back. But David Johnson, especially, I think we just have to be done counting on him in fantasy because he might have a nice game once in a while, but he really did not much to help us other than, maybe 2 good games last year. I'm done with him. I don't care where he's getting drafted. I'm avoiding.
Yeah, I'm avoiding this entire Houston Texans offense. I don't understand how you can be drafting this offense right now with what's going on with Deshaun Watson. You got to think best case scenario, Deshaun Watson's on the commissioner exempt list for 6 to 8 weeks, if he's even a Houston Texan next year. So definitely. And like you said, David Johnson, he didn't look like he had a lot of juice left last year. I don't care if he's the lead back. That's not going to move the needle for me. Totally off of David Johnson. And another guy I'm off of, who people still seem to have faith in, is Josh Jacobs. I don't understand it. We're going into year 3 now. What have the Raiders done to make you think Josh Jacobs is a bell cow back, or Josh Jacobs is a guy who's going to catch 50 to 60 passes? He's just not. I mean, even with Devonta Booker last year, he still wasn't that guy. Now they brought in Kenyon Drake. And by the way, they gave Kenyon Drake a decent chunk of money, right? They didn't give him, sit on the bench all year money. They gave him money where you got to think he's going to be a part of the game plan. Josh Jacobs, to me, maybe if I could get Josh Jacobs in the 5th, 6th round, I'd be okay drafting him as like a low-end RB2. But he's still going in the 3rd round in most drafts, and I just don't understand it. Why? What's his upside in this offense right now? No ceiling at all, in my opinion. Doesn't get work in the passing game. I just don't understand how people are still drafting Josh Jacobs. It's time to stop believing in Josh Jacobs and stop drafting him.
Yeah, and he's going to be drafted way too high everywhere. Some places he'll still be a 2nd round pick just because everyone needs their running back. And you look, and it's true, he was one of the top workhorse backs last year in terms of how much he touched the ball relative to other running backs. It's not going to be the case. We already know that's not going to happen with Kenyon Drake there. And this offense is just going to kind of be the same, right? Nothing's really changed there. Same quarterback, definitely the same coach. And so I don't see anything that would inspire you to say he's my guy, or I'm going to hitch my wagon to him in fantasy. Similar story for Ronald Jones. Volume really was kind of there for the first half of the year because Fournette was a non-factor. Well, Leonard Fournette re-signed, so that's, at the very least going to keep him where he was last year, Ronald Jones, that is. And yeah, he had his moments. But here's the thing. Down the stretch, where it mattered most, what did we see happen? Fournette slowly ate into that workload. Even if you just ignore those couple games where he missed because of COVID, in his last 4 games he did play, he averaged 72 total yards per game, and there was no floor as a pass catcher. He caught 2 balls in those last 4 games. All right, so you don't have that PPR floor, and guess what? Just because they could, they also signed Gio Bernard recently, and so guess who's going to be the third down back? Jones now is basically reliant on big plays and big games where they have positive game script. So is that somebody you can trust in fantasy? Absolutely not. I think Ronald Jones, if anything, goes down, and we can't rely on him anymore.
Yeah, and Jones was a guy I was drafting a lot of in my early best ball drafts because I didn't think they would re-sign Leonard Fournette. Once they did, I stopped drafting him. And now that they've even brought in Gio Bernard, there's no way I'm touching this backfield. I don't see how you can draft any of these guys. Maybe Gio as like a late round flyer, just because of his pass catching ability. But other than that, agree with you. No way you can draft Ronald Jones. And another guy I still don't understand why people are drafting this guy is David Montgomery. What has to happen for you to not draft David Montgomery? So, at first it was like he had that incredibly easy schedule, but it's okay. I still think he can be productive. Okay, fine. What about Tariq Cohen coming back? Yeah, he'll eat into his pass catching, but I still think he can be productive. Okay, fine. What about the fact that they went out and signed Damian Williams, who we have seen be productive on a football field? And still, it's not enough for people. They still think David Montgomery is going to somehow be even close to what he was last year, which he's not going to be. That was the perfect storm of everything for David Montgomery down the stretch. They had no other running backs. He basically got all the touches. They were playing the softest defenses you could possibly play. Everything broke right for David Montgomery. That's not going to happen this year. More competition for touches, right? Not going to be involved in the passing game. Not going to get that, cream puff schedule again. I don't understand why people are still this guy is still going, in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round of drafts, and I don't get it at all. There is no way, no how I will be drafting David Montgomery.
Well, I know why people are drafting David Montgomery, because some people maybe have fantasy championships thanks to him because that schedule, right? He put up monster games when it mattered most. It's still fresh in our minds. He came through when it's so hard to find a reliable running back, and he was the guy. And again, we talk about a player who's getting the huge share of touches in that backfield. He was basically getting everything in that backfield, but that's because they had nobody else. Cohen is back. Damian Williams is there. I know that's not a lot, but it's something, which is more than last year, which they had really nothing behind him. They had 0 depth at running back. So yeah, I think a lot of people are going to vastly overestimate his production this year and overpay. And I mean, I'm with you. I wouldn't say he's a total must avoid for me, but I don't want him as a starting running back. And that's where he's going to get taken in most drafts. I'm not touching James Conner. There's a reason why that was his very first visit as a free agent. He's had knee issues, shoulder issues in the past. Now there's some sort of a toe issue that we are hearing about. He's missed 12 games over the last 3 seasons combined, and he's just never 100% right. There's a lot of games where he's questionable or banged up mid-game. That's just a headache, first of all. But second of all, we know that there's a lot of teams that just don't have interest in him, as more than maybe a second running back. Arizona, that seems like the perfect landing spot. But how much are they really going to rely on him running the ball? I still think they would draft a running back, and I'm just not going to count on it doing much to move the needle for him fantasy-wise. So let's see what happens after the NFL draft, where a lot of things will definitely change. All right, appreciate you watching. Hit that subscribe button and leave us a comment. Let us know, what do you think? Are you going to touch these guys? Where would you be comfortable drafting any of these players, if at all? All right, thanks for watching.